Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Miro webinar on Oracle's Java licensing. We're going to begin the presentation in about 1 minute. We're just going to give everyone a chance to log in. Again, thank you for joining us. This is the Miro webinar on Oracle Java licensing. We're just going to give it another 30 seconds or so to give everybody a chance to log in and get their sound working. So we'll begin the presentation very shortly. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the presentation. We are Miro Consulting, and this is our presentation on Oracle Java licensing. I'm your presenter. My name is Sean Donahue, and this presentation was prepared by Tim Hegedus, our Director of Technical Services. Next slide. Before we begin, we just want to give you an idea who Miro is. We are a leading global provider of software asset management and subscription management services for Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon Web Services, and Salesforce. We specialize in license management, audit advisory, negotiation tactics, support management, and cloud services. And our mission is to help our clients maximize their ROI on their software license and subscription investments. We help you stay in compliance. We make sure you negotiate the best possible contract and audit settlements. Next slide. All right, so today we're talking about Java licensing. Originally, Java underwent a lot of changes over the years. It came out, I believe it was the 80s or the 90s, and for a while it underwent significant changes practically on a daily basis. Now that's slowed down a lot, and it's stabilized drastically from those early years. So what we're going to cover in today's session is what you see here. We're going to go over an overview. We're going to talk about free versions and paid versions. We're going to talk about the different agreements that they fall under. We're going to talk about Java sales inquiries, aka Java audits, how to upgrade your Java, and how to use alternatives. And finally, if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them for you in the time allotted. Sometimes some of the questions may require more information, so please feel free to ask anything you like. And if we can't answer your question with the information provided, we'll just get back to you after the session and talk to you then. All right, so next slide. All right, so let's talk about the older versions of Java, just so we can get to where we are today. So clearly there was Java's original 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The most recent ones of past versions that are any relevance these days are Java 5 and 6. So Java 5 and 6 are in sustaining support only. And we'll get into later what exactly these different levels of support mean. Basically, for 5 and 6, if you have them deployed already, you can still keep them deployed, but they are in sustaining support. And there are different free versions and paid versions of those. Java 7 and 8 are the more recent versions in the older side of Java. They are either in Premier or extended support. And again, there are free versions and there are paid versions. We'll show you that in just one moment. We just wanted to get that out of the way and quickly mention that if you still have anything using Java Web Start, which is deprecated at this point, Java 8 is the sunset release until the end of extended support, and that runs all the way through 2030. So Java 8 extended support is still good, but if you are using Java Web Start for something, please keep in mind that is deprecated. And this includes the deployment stack Oracle. So can we move on to the next one? All right, so here you go to look at what are the most recent versions of these older Java systems, because we find a lot of people still have these. So for version 5, the first paid version is 23, update number 23. So if you have 23 or later, that's the one. And don't worry about jotting these numbers down. Don't worry about trying to quickly write everything down. We're going to put this all together and send it to you after the event. So no need to scribble and take notes as we go. So for Java 6, it was the number 45. Update 45 was the last free one. And when you hit 51, it's the first paid one. Now you may notice what happened to Java 6 versions 46 through 50. And the short version is they were never released. So Java doesn't always release numerically. Sometimes update versions get skipped. So if you are trying to look one up and can't find it, that is the reason. Don't worry about it. Java 7, which is in extended support. I think I have to check the next page. The last free version is 80 and the first paid version is 85. And for Java 8, which is the most common these days, the last free version is 202 and the first paid version is 211. And again, we'll send you this after. Don't kill yourself writing it down. Next slide. All right, so one of the most important things to understand here when we go through here is what's the difference between long-term support and non-long-term support. And it's simply like this. The long-term support ones, Oracle's promising they're going to maintain, put that in mainstream support for 5 years, and then they're going to do extended support for 3 years. So these are the ones that are, the flagship versions, so to speak. Then we have also the non-long-term version. So these are more iterations that Oracle puts together between the long-term versions, which develop new features, improvements, things like that. And then eventually, when there's enough of those get put together, they call the next version a long-term version. Now, you can move to the short-term version, what we call the non-long-term versions here. They're only maintained for 6 months at a time, and they're typically released every few months. So there's a bit of overlap, not always, but most of the time. They do not get extended support. So if you are on a non-long-term release version, for example, and there's a bug fix that is critical, if it's out of mainstream support, you will not get that. You have to upgrade to the next version to get those bug fixes. So that's kind of the important thing to remember here is that, if you have anything, if your concern is you want it to be supported long-term, you want the LTS version. If you are looking for the latest, greatest, you want the non-long-term support version. Next slide. All right, so again, this is why we're going to send this to you afterward. You don't want to kill yourself writing this down. So what we've done is we've highlighted in red all the long-term versions. And you can see here, there's no real pattern to it. 7 and 8 were long-term versions, and then we skipped to 11, and then we skipped to 17, and then it hasn't even come out yet, but 21 will be the next one. So what I want to, pull to your attention here is take a look at 7 and 8, for example. So we talked about 7 being one of the newer versions. Well, if you take a look at number 7, which is the top line, it's already out of extended support. It went out of extended support this past summer. So if you're still running 7 versions of 7 on something, you got to keep in mind that that is now in sustaining support, which is not as high level. 8 is the latest version, as you can see here, that is a long-term version that is still in extended support. And take a look, that goes all the way to 2030, December of 2030. So 8 is a real flagship version that, Oracle's really standing behind in terms of long-term support. Because if you look ahead and you skip the number 11 there, which is the next long-term support version, that's only in long-term support until 2026. So again, some of these things are a little counterintuitive, and you wouldn't think that 8 would have a longer extended support time than 11. Or even if you look down at 17, that expires in 2029. So even 8's going to have extended support till even after version 17. And we don't get all the way until a future release, number 21, before we see an extended support version beyond 31. And that's very important in terms of keeping bug fixes, keeping security fixes. That's all very important to have. So that's why you really want to focus on which one of these are in Premier or extended support and which are not. And then you can see, of course, all the ones in black. Those are the ones that they live and die 6 months at a time. And most of them all the way up to, what is it here? I believe 18 is expiring this month in terms of Premier support. Again, as one of those non-long-term releases. Usually there are fees with extended support. I want to point out number 8 here. Version 8 Oracle has waived the long-term support fees, the extended support fees. So that is something, again, to keep in mind versus the other ones that will be in extended support. Next slide. All right, so what does extended support even mean? Well, that's something important to consider. So what do you got covered? You've got the basics. You've got bug fixes, security fixes, upgrade tools, service requests, support. But keep in mind, look at that, it's non-technical customer service. That's one of the differences with Premier. What is not covered, and this could be very, very important for your organization, is certifications of new third-party products or versions of that product. So if you have an app or a piece of software or a server or anything really that supports a third-party application or is in fact the third-party application, that is not going to be covered. So if Java is embedded in your device, your product, your software, your app, whatever, it will not be covered if it is in extended support for certification. So that is something to find out at your organization. If you are concerned, it could be more than just your desktops and laptops. It could be your actual software. It could be your product. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so what if you don't want to buy Java? Java was originally free. It was only since April 2019 that Java actually became a paid product. Well, when that happened, as you might imagine, because Java was just about everywhere in everything, a lot of organizations decided to fork the Java framework and make their own versions of Java, essentially a Java replacement. So Microsoft made one called Adopt OpenJDK. Amazon has their own version called Corretto. IBM and Red Hat also, who are the same company basically now, they have their own versions each. Microsoft has two more here, both for Azul. There are two more versions called Azul, Zulu, and Azul Zing. And finally, to make it even more confusing, if it isn't already enough, OpenJDK, which is actually supported by Oracle. And if you're not familiar with what open source is, essentially open source means that it's free to use under most conditions, not all. Certain open source licenses, there are small variations. But open source basically means it's maintained by a community of programmers. Sometimes those are people at enterprise organizations like a Microsoft or a Google or something like that. And sometimes they're independent developers. And they usually have a community, and they have steering committees, and they make sure the code works, make sure there's no backdoors, no bugs, no security concerns. And only when those top level experts in their different specialties confirm that, okay, this is good, this can be put out to the public at large to use, only then does it get set for release. So there are advantages and disadvantages. If you have open source and something's not really working, well, there's no customer support unless you're paying a third-party support, as opposed to an Oracle, for example. If they are, that's not open source. If you have an Oracle product, you can call Oracle for support, obviously. Open source, you don't really have that. So there are benefits and drawbacks to using open source. And of course, if you are a Microsoft customer or an Amazon customer or IBM, whoever, they very likely will help you and help support their open source version of Java. But keep in mind, it is an open source version. So that level of support may or may not be the same as their first party products. All right, I'm going to skip to the next slide. All right, so, let's talk about the different types of agreements. So there were various different names of the different Oracle contracts that you could get. So the earlier releases, we talked about 5, 6, whatever it might be before that, everything, and the versions of 8 and 7 that were out before April 2019, they are licensed under what's called the Oracle Binary Code License Agreement. And to give you an idea, that has features that'll say things like, Oracle grants you a non-exclusive, non-transferable, limited license without license fees to reproduce and use internally the software complete and unmodified for the sole purpose of running program. However, the license set forth does not extend to commercial features. So that if you're an organization, you're an enterprise organization, that's you. So keep that in mind. If you see anyone in your organization say, oh, no, it's free. Well, it's free for some people. It's not free for commercial use. So keep that in mind in case you hear that. And now there are a bunch of other restrictions we're not going to go into. And again, depending on your situation, these may apply to you or not. And that's why we always recommend don't go it alone. Talk to a licensing expert before you go down the road of assuming you know how all of it works, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're negotiating and you find out your negotiation position is not what you thought it was, or the versions you thought were free are not. So we had 17, which just went out of last year, went out of support, was free, and 19 will also be free for its 6-month term. So keep in mind there are also some free, but again, sometimes they're not, depending on your circumstances. So the key language in these agreements are: Oracle will provide these free releases and updates starting with excuse me, Oracle JDK 17, and continue for 1 full year after the next long-term release. Prior versions are not affected. So our next long-term release is going to be 21. It's going to be released next September. So if you're on Java 17, and assuming you can get there, you can use Java for free until 2024 under certain circumstances. That's another 3 years, so that's not bad. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about Java audits, or as they are formally known, sales inquiries. So this isn't exactly like your formal Oracle audit. If you're familiar with them, it was when Oracle sends you a letter in the mail, the snail mail, that says, you know, we're formally going to audit you as our rights. So what a Java sales inquiry is it's a reach out from your Oracle Java rep via phone, via email, via LinkedIn, maybe via carrier pigeons. They are very, very thorough and aggressive when it comes to reaching you for your sales inquiry. And they will eventually meet with you or copy on the messages, etc. GLAS, and if you don't know GLAS, that's a new term at Oracle. It stands for Global License Advisory Services. If you remember LMS, License Management Services, this is their new name. So new name, same organization. They will be there because they want to lend credibility and maybe a little concern to you when you have this inquiry come to you. So that's why they'll be on the call. So now you might want to know, well, how the heck does Oracle know how many Java licenses I need? Well, it's pretty simple. They're just going to ask you for all the number of processors you have and all the number of workstations and devices, etc. And they're going to assume you need a Java subscription for every single one of them. And let me tell you, they may not be wrong. That Java might be on every single one of them. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to quickly give you 2 things you should be concerned about that are your audit risk. So number one thing you want to find out from your IT team or from whoever's responsible, can your users upgrade their own Java? So Java will prompt itself to update and upgrade, etc. If your organization gives its employees the rights to do that upgrade, or just a level of rights that allow them to get away with it, they might upgrade themselves out of compliance. If that's a concern of yours, talk to your IT administrator and make sure that they are not allowed to upgrade themselves or update themselves out of compliance. Second part we want to tell you is don't try to negotiate on your own. You might buy more than you need. You might buy terms and conditions that you don't need. You might buy for a time frame that you don't need. The Oracle rep, of course, will want to sell you the maximum. We'll get into that in 1 second on what they want to sell you. So it's really the best way to do it is to get help from an expert. If not Miro, then someone else, somebody who's a Java expert. We would love to help you, but any expertise is better than none. You know, it's not everybody's day job to understand the terms and conditions and policies of a Java agreement. So, you know, bring in the experts who do this day in, day out, every day. It's really going to be worth your while. Next slide. All right. So here's another great slide. I really want to encourage everyone to take a look at this. So what's Oracle going to come back and offer you? Well, they've got 3 versions of their Java subscriptions: a 5-year, a 3-year, and a 1-year. So if you get the 5-year, it may look like a lot at first, but what you've got to consider is that you're going to get discounts. You're going to get 2 kinds of discounts. You're going to get a discount for signing up for 5 years, and you're also going to get a discount for the quantity that you buy. So depending on how many Java subscriptions you need, 5 years might actually be the best one for you if you are buying a lot. So that's something to consider. You will also have a 3-year option. So a 3-year option is good if you think, hey, in 3 years, I want to get my company to no longer use Java. We want to migrate. We have a plan. We're going to migrate to open source. A lot of organizations do, but it's not a quick move. There's a lot of organizations that have legal requirements, security requirements. Some organizations don't allow open source at all. So if you had this 3-year plan, you could sign up for a 3-year deal, but the gotcha here is you don't get a discount. You don't get a quantity discount. You don't get a term discount. You're going to be paying full price. Now you might think, hey, I'll just do my least option ever. I'll do the 1-year term, which sounds great. It's going to be the lowest price until you realize in the terms, they're going to charge you a back usage fee to April 2019. In other words, you're going to pay for 1 year going forward and 40 months going backwards, all the way, it's 41 months now, I think, all the way to April 2019. So beware if you are looking at a 1-year contract that is in there. So keep that in mind. And we want to also stress here, when they talk to you, when you might get a very aggressive call from your Oracle sales rep. Like I said before, they will try very hard to get in contact with you. It is not something you can ignore. If you ignore it, it will only get worse. So you should answer them. It really would be best if you talk to some organization like Miro to know where your compliance position is. But again, if Oracle comes a knocking, you really should respond. And we want to encourage you, even if they are a bit aggressive in terms to reach you, do not be hostile back. And when I say hostile, I simply mean this. Do not say to Oracle, hey, we're not going to, we actually talked to a client who did this, an Oracle client who did this. So this is not theoretical. The client basically said, we're not buying any Java. We're going to get off of it right now. You can't make us buy Java. And basically very aggressively responded back, objecting to the entire concept of paying for Java. Well, Oracle responded by auditing, they're sending them a letter to say, well, okay, you're audited for your entire Oracle footprint, not just Java, everything. So it's best to answer them, and it's best to, do it professionally. So keep that in mind. You can't just ignore it and have it go away. Next slide. All right, so let's just talk about what are our conclusions and takeaways here. So the first one really goes to state is, find out what versions you have installed on your different servers and your different workstations. Are they the same? Are they different? Is there a policy in your organization? Is there straight controls on who can upgrade and who hasn't? Looking forward, take a look at the different long-term and not long-term releases and see which ones are better for your organization. So like I said, certain versions you can get for free if they're non-long-term, but you got to keep on it. You got to keep updating it. There are options. You don't have to live with Java forever. You can move to open source alternatives, which are free, but there's no one to call for help, basically, if something goes wrong. So it's a give and take for those. You might find that you can move some things in your organization to open source, and it makes sense. And you might find that other things, it makes a lot more sense to stay on Java. Keep it, like I said before, make sure the versions that are in your various agreements with Oracle are covered. And if you get a proposal from Oracle for Java, examine it carefully. Even better would be to have a third-party set of experts examine it carefully. Sometimes Oracle and a client will negotiate, and in trying to get a better deal, a client will actually give up terms that it needs. So one of the terms I always say, example, is non-worldwide usage. So sometimes Oracle will present a client a quote to use something, and it's only for one country, and the client really needs it for all countries. And it's buried in the terms somewhere, and they don't see it. Lots of things like that can happen. So it's not Oracle's fault, it's not the client's fault. They're both trying to get the best deal possible, but they don't know everything each other knows. And mistakes can be made that way. And if you sign a contract that doesn't get you what you need, well, Oracle's position will be that you sign that contract. That's not the end of the road. So a lot of times you can negotiate for terms and conditions you may not have agreed to initially, but you actually need. So it's not terrible. Miro helped a client like that once who, instead of purchasing all their licensing again, we helped them negotiate worldwide rights for a quarter of that price. So they really made out. And you really need to look at all your systems, and you got to understand, what are the different factors involved? What are my costs? What are my compliance? Does my IT team have the skill set and the time to make these changes in a time frame that makes sense? Are we moving away from this product line entirely? Are we doubling down on it? You got to look at your IT roadmap before you make any decisions. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions on the floor. I'm going to quickly check our Q&A here and see what we've got as terms of questions. Give me just one moment to pull it up. All right. You indicated that extended support has fees. What can we expect? Okay, great question. Typically, unless waived by Oracle, the extended support fees are 20% of the cost of the subscription for the first year, and then 10% of the cost of subscriptions in years 2 and 3. So it works very similar to regular Oracle support. All right, so the next question is about the Oracle Java audit. Can you expand upon it? Yes. So this is not a typical Oracle Java audit conducted by Glass, or as they used to be called, LMS. It is a sales inquiry, but you should treat it like if it was the IRS calling you. The IRS never calls you. Let's call it if the IRS mails you. Don't ignore it. Now, Oracle understands that Java is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So that this stems largely from being free for so long. So it provides, on every workstation, every clone and chip of the servers, everything. And as a technology product, it abides by the same rules as Oracle's database. That is the core factor, which they will ask you about. Proprietary hosting, again, which they will ask you about. When we talked about third-party stuff, that's when we met about that. And virtualization. And keep in mind, Oracle does not accept software virtualization. So very important to know. Someone asked about the alternatives to Java. We kind of covered that. There's open source alternatives. You can absolutely go with one of those. All right, we have a question. How does Java get installed? It's usually pre-installed. It's probably on the machine when you purchased it. So keep that in mind. It's lots of things will come with Java already on there. And there is something called a Java control panel on a Windows machine. I'm not familiar with it on Mac, I'm sorry. But on a Windows machine, you can go to your Java control panel and see which version you have, if any. It's possible you don't have any, but it's not very likely. Okay, the next question is, if company has a VDI environment where both a VDI middle tier and a virtualization middle tier together provide VDI VMs as a client and no physical PCs, how does Oracle license Java JRE where it is needed to be licensed? It's probably at the virtual machine level. But again, we're going to get back to you afterward because there's a couple of it depends as part of that question before we can really give you an answer. We don't like to give answers about virtualization without getting additional details because one of the most frequent audit failures we find is organizations who think their virtualization is properly configured and Oracle disagrees. So we will talk to you about that. The person who asked that question, we're going to get back to you afterward and get the details to make sure we get you an accurate answer. Next question, what do you see in the way of back usage fees? Does that turn the 1 year into a 3 year like deal? Basically, yes. 3 years of a deal that you've already used 2 years of or more at this point. I forget which, but like I said, we're at 41 months. So they will backdate you. So it's even more than 3 years, I guess. So 3 years would be 36 months. So it's like 4.5 technically is what you'll end up paying for. And you'll pay full price. So yeah, keep that in mind when you are looking at the 1 year deal. How is back usage calculated? Pretty much like I said, they look at everything in terms of every device you've got, every server you've got, every handheld device, everything. They're just going to assume Java's on all of them, and they're probably not wrong. The only question it really comes down to is it a free or a paid version of Java? If your IT organization did not make a concerted effort, specific effort, to swap out Java for open source products, they're probably running Java. See here, I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. I got 1 more. We could probably do 1 or 2 more after this. Well, we already answered that one. So I had 1 question that came in during the registration process. And I think we already, oh, okay. Yeah, if you answered that one. What if I ignore my Oracle reps' emails and calls? They might audit you. If you really want to play hardball like that, it's a matter of if not when. We find that Oracle audits most of its clients every 3 to 5 years on average, sometimes more. And keep in mind, Oracle will keep an eye on your organization. If they see turmoil, if they see IT staff leaving in droves, if they see your asset manager leaving, if they know you don't have any third party supporting your licensing, they will know that you are ripe for an audit. So keep that in mind. Other things like divestitures and mergers, things like that, they know that causes a lot of strife and chaos at organizations. So they know those are where they want to audit, because a lot of times those are the organizations that have fallen out of compliance. And keep in mind, Oracle's just enforcing the terms that everyone agreed to when it was purchased. They would everybody would be in compliance. We find few people are in compliance, complete compliance. Usually there's sometimes it's one or two small things. A lot of times it's one or two big things that most organizations who think they're in compliance are, unless they're actively managing it with a third-party expert. Let me see, do I have any? I think I have one final question here. If a company has Oracle DB license and VDI VMs that have an Oracle client, are Java installations outside of the client free, or do they follow different rules? It's it's the same person. One of those, we're going to get back to you afterwards. I think I have your answer, but I got to check with my analyst on a couple of things there. But that's definitely, we're going to get back to you because there's other parts involved. Okay, can you confirm that all versions in one of your Java slides are paid versions? Some are paid and some well, see, those were the additions, not the updates. So keep in mind, so like let's say version 8, for example, my slide just listed version 8 and said it was long-term support. So depending on what update you have, so 8 point whatever, I think it was 202 if I remember. So anything before that is free. Anything after that is paid. So it's not the version specifically like 8 or 9 that determines whether it's paid or not. It is the update number on that version that determines whether it's paid. And that's only true for 5, 6, 7, 8. Everything after that, whether it's paid or not, depends on whether it's long-term or short-term. And sometimes it varies even then. Again, we'll send you the information afterward so you can refer to that chart as you need it. And in fact, that is pretty much all the questions we have. If we didn't answer your question, you have an additional question, or feel free to contact us. You can, Stefan, I think you have the next slide. So you can contact us on the web at miroconsulting.com. You can call us at 732-736-8511. You can email us at info@miroconsulting.com. So if you have any further questions or want to get some guidance on what you need to do to be compliant with your Java, please reach out to us right away. Again, it's best to talk and understand your compliance position before you are faced with the decision of whether to purchase a Java subscription. So that concludes the webinar. We'll send you all the details afterward. Just give us a day or so to get it all together. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope we have used the time wisely. Thank you again. Have a great day.